Hello, my beautiful friends. Welcome back to my channel, or if you are new here, my name is Cami. What I like to do here on YouTube is I like to talk about true crime cases that have not been heavily covered by other YouTubers. And today, oh boy, we are going to be talking about an entitled kid. And by the end of this, you might be saying, well, how do we know he doesn't just have something going on? But I don't think so. You'll get to hear my feelings on this case as I go through this, so I'm not going to talk too much about it. So instead, I'll just shut my trap and let's get right on into the video. Tyler Hadley, party animal, professional party thrower. No, he wasn't any of that. Not even close. Tyler was born in St. Lucie, Florida to Blake and Mary Jo Hadley, and he was 17 at the time that this happened. He wasn't a popular kid, and growing up, he was really close to his parents, but once he became a teenager, they kind of started to drift apart, which I think that's kind of normal for teenagers. You know, you're starting to get into adulthood and you think you are an adult. So whenever your parents step in and try and help you and try and lead you back on the right path, if you get taken off of it, you think that they're just trying to keep you from having fun. And that's kind of what Tyler thought. So I don't really think that's a red flag because, like I said, teenagers do that. Teenagers act like that. So Tyler was apparently a good kid, but once he started pulling away from his parents is when he got involved in juvenile delinquency. So at one point, a neighbor had seen Tyler smoking outside of his house, and whenever the neighbor tried to tell Tyler's mom was just kind of like, I don't think so. That doesn't sound like my son. At one point when he was a teenager, he had actually gotten into a fight with one of his friends, and before that, he had a juvenile record for Tyler had gotten into like a fist fight, a physical altercation with one of his friends, and it ended with his friend calling the cops on him. And before that, he had a juvenile record for burglary, and this added the charge of aggravated battery to his record. So for this, he ended up having a sentence of house arrest. Why would you give someone with aggravated battery house arrest? I don't know. That's weird to me, but I don't know how Florida works. Florida's a little bit weird. While he was on house arrest, his mom actually took his phone away from him for 2 weeks, which that seems kind of getting off easy, Tyler, but it still kind of really pissed him off because his mom took his phone and that's the only way he could talk to his friends. In June of 2011, his mental health had kind of gotten really bad, so his mom sent him away to a mental health clinic, and he served out some time there. That makes it sound like he was like sentenced to it, but he wasn't. His mom checked him into it, and once he was finished with his treatment there, he came home and was at his friend's house. He was completely drunk, and he peed on his friend's bed, and his behavior was just kind of escalating. So naturally, people were asking Tyler's mom, hey, aren't you scared that he's gonna like hurt you since he's kind of escalating his behavior? He's kind of getting a little bit more out of control. But his mom said that she wasn't scared that he was going to hurt her. She was scared that he was going to end up hurting himself. So to me, this just kind of like proves that, especially his mom, really just kind of wanted what was best for him and was trying to help him get better with his mental health problems. So this place that Tyler lived, this Port St. Lucie, it is about 50 miles north of West Palm Beach, and you know that like running joke that people have that when people retire, they go to Florida? This is where I imagine they go. Every single retired person that lives in the United States lives here. That's what I think. Okay? So this town has 6 golf courses, 12 assisted living homes, 7 funeral homes. I'm sorry. That's not funny. 7 funeral homes, 2 bingo halls, and a shuffleboard club. So just really a retirement community. And it had no beach access, so you couldn't get to the beach. And really the only thing it had to do for like families and teenagers is they have this like massive arcade called Super Play USA, and I googled this place and I think this place looks so fun. It's got like a bowling alley, a laser tag, and it's got like a giant arcade in it. It doesn't look like it's been updated since the 90s, but my dream is to perpetually live in the 90s because I was born in 1993, so I'm a 90s kid. I don't know, maybe I just think it looks fun because whenever I was a teenager, our idea of fun was to get dropped off at the movie theater behind the Target, and no one actually went and saw movies. We all just kind of walked along the strip that had the Target, and I can say that now because I'm 27 and don't live with my mom anymore, and I know she watches my videos, so sorry, Mom. So Port St. Lucie was also known as Pot St. Lucie because they've got a lot of stoners there. It's got a lot of pot, kind of like my town. So like I said, Tyler was not like a super popular kid. He was around 6 foot tall. He weighed about 160 pounds, and everyone just kind of thought he was the weird kid because he was really quiet, almost to the point of being nonverbal, except apparently he would just bust out in class with the most like random stuff, so everyone just kind of thought he just spoke nonsense. And he hung out with like the potheads and the bad kids, and he did have one person that he kind of considered his friend, and his name was Mike Mandel. But Mike said that Tyler was kind of just this kid that he hung out with at school. So you know how in school, well, I don't know if that's how it is now, but whenever I was younger, you would have the friends that you really kind of only saw during school. You wouldn't really think to make plans with them outside of school. That's kind of how this was. That's kind of how this friendship was. Mike kind of didn't really want to be outside friends with Tyler because he didn't like the kids that Tyler hung out with. Like I said, Tyler hung out with like the potheads and the bad kids, and Mike just really didn't want anything to do with that. All right, now let's talk about Tyler's parents for a minute. Mary Jo and Blake. Mary Jo was an elementary school teacher, and Blake was an engineer at the St. Lucie nuclear plant. They were kind of the type that wanted Tyler to stay out of trouble. They didn't really want him to throw any kind of party, and in a town like this where there's nothing to do, you kind of know which parents are cool with letting their kids have and go to parties, and I guess everyone kind of knew that Tyler's parents weren't really that type, and this is just my interpretation of it. That's just my best guess, because I live in a town that's kind of like that, where whenever we were teenagers, we knew not even teenagers, but whenever we were under the age of 21, we kind of knew which of our friends' parents would be cool with letting them throw a party. So I assume that's kind of the situation here. Everyone knew that Tyler's parents didn't want him to throw parties. They didn't want him to go to parties. I don't necessarily think there's anything wrong with parents letting their underage kids throw parties because, let's be honest, most kids are going to do it anyway. So a lot of parents kind of think, well, I'd rather them be safe and do it at my house than be somewhere where they can't be monitored. So July 16th, 2011 rolls around. All week, Tyler has been telling kids at school that he's going to throw a party because his parents were out of town. But like I said, the parents weren't the type to let him throw parties. So he's like, they're going to be out of town. I can throw a party. I can have fun. Maybe it'll get me popular. I don't know. I guess that's maybe what he thought. So because of who his parents were, no one really believed that he was going to be throwing a party. They all just thought, okay, yeah, Tyler's going to throw a party. All right, sure. So at about 1:15 p.m. on July 16th, 2011, he posted on Facebook that he was maybe having a party that night. So Tyler's going to have this party, right? Because his parents are out of town. But there's a problem with that. That is that Tyler's parents weren't out of town at all. So he's telling these people all week, he's telling his friends all week, I'm gonna have a party on the 16th, whatever day that was. What day was that? That's a Saturday. So he's telling people, he's like, this Saturday I'm gonna have a party. My parents are gonna be out of town. So now Tyler's gotta figure out how to convince them to let him have a party. Well, Tyler knew how to have a party without his parents' permission. Before we get into that though, let's talk about what happened the day of that party. That morning at around 11:30 a.m., he messaged his friend Antonio on Facebook, and the conversation went like this. Tyler says, "Sup, bruh?" Antonio says, "Chillin'. What you doing tonight?" Tyler says, "Trying to have a party at my crib." Antonio says, "Your parents ain't home?" Tyler says, "Nope. Well, they'll be leaving soon." So 5 p.m. rolls around, and Tyler's kind of ready to have this party. So he takes 3 ecstasy pills, and he's feeling pretty good. So sometime before 5 p.m., he takes his parents' phones and he goes and he gets this hammer, right? His mom was working at the family computer, and Tyler goes up behind her and just starts beating the crap out of her with this hammer, just starts hitting her in the head with this hammer. And of course she's screaming, and his dad comes to check and see what's going on, and at this point he's already beaten his mom to death with this hammer. So then he takes the hammer and starts working on his dad, just starts hitting him and killing them. So that's how he decides he's gonna have a party. He decides, I know they won't let me have a party, so instead of, finding one of my friends whose parents will let them have a party and having it there, I'm just gonna kill my parents. So they were confused and shocked, and they're like, why are you doing this? Why are you trying to kill us with this hammer? And Tyler just says, why the fuck not? Like, he's put a red shirt in the wash with white clothing, and he's just like, why the fuck not? Alright, psycho. After his parents are dead, he drags their bodies to the master bedroom, cleans it up as best as he can, which was not a very good cleanup job, which we'll get to in a second. And he looks at himself in the mirror, looks at his reflection, and starts laughing like a maniac. So it takes Tyler 3 hours to clean up this mess, and he puts his parents underneath a pile of broken dishes, shattered glass, bloody towels that he had used to clean up the blood from the crime scene, a coffee table, pillowcases, books, a mop, wipes, and a canister of coffee grounds. Here's the thing about most murders. They think really hard about how they're going to commit the crimes, but from what I've seen, most don't think about how they're going to clean it up. That's exactly what happened in Tyler's case. He is like, I'm gonna kill my parents, but he doesn't think, how am I gonna clean up this mess? Like, dude, you probably would have been better off just, like, burying them in the backyard or something. If you look at pictures of this crime scene, which I'm going to insert right here, it just kind of looks exactly like what it was. It just looks like a teenager that has killed his parents just because, and is just covering the bodies with anything he can find. Like, a canister of coffee grounds? Come on, dude. The way that this picture of this crime scene looks makes me super uncomfortable, and I don't know why. It kind of reminds me, if you've ever seen like a liminal space bot on, or like an AI generated picture, that's kind of what this looks like. And liminal spaces make me comfortable. This doesn't. After he's cleaned up as best as he possibly can, he throws this party all while his parents are dead in the master bedroom, and he locks that door, makes sure no one can go in. And I mentioned that he didn't clean up the scene very well. There's still dried blood in a ton of places, like on the floor, on the keyboard. It's just a lot of dried blood left over. So he didn't do a good job at all of cleaning up this crime scene. Sometime after the murders, but before the party, Tyler went to the ATM, and we don't know. I couldn't find any information about how much money he withdrew or even what time he went to the ATM. But we do know that after his parents were murdered, he did go to the ATM, and I assume he probably pulled out money to get like supplies for the party, because keep in mind, his parents didn't let him throw parties, so he probably couldn't get anything for it up until this point. So I assume that's probably what he did. So 11:30 rolls around. People start showing up to this party, and it's not a whole lot of people that showed up, but the first people that arrived did say that they could tell that Tyler was on ecstasy, because he seemed anxious, and he was telling people at the party, don't smoke in this house, it's my parents' house, which your parents are dead in the next room, but yeah, don't smoke in their house, I guess. He was also telling them not to do, like, general party things. So, okay, look, if I was a teenager at this party, because he's only, like, a few months younger than me, so it's very possible that if I lived in this area at that time, I could have been at this party. But if I showed up to this party and he's like, yeah, it's a party, but you can't do party things, I'd simply leave. But the kids there did try to make the best of it. They're like, all right, we can't smoke, but let's try and make the best of it, I guess. There's nothing else to do in this town anyway. So they start listening to music, they're playing beer pong, and they were drinking, and a few of the kids that were there did say that they saw this weird brown red stain around the, like, computer keyboard, which obviously we know is blood, but they had no idea. I guess they thought maybe it was just like a drink. So they're at the computer People are coming and going, and everyone's playing DJ. They're all putting on their favorite songs. I think one of the songs they mentioned that was played a lot was No Sleep by Wiz Khalifa. That brings me back to my party days, that song. But all the parties I went to, there wasn't any dead bodies in the room next to me. One person even joked at the party that the house smelled like dead bodies, and that got Tyler super anxious, which, I mean, I guess so. So remember how I said that Tyler didn't want people smoking in the house since it was his parents' house? Yeah, that didn't last long. So this poor house, I mean, I feel bad for Tyler's parents, obviously, but I feel bad for this poor house because this guy was just letting the partygoers destroy this house. He was letting people put out cigarettes on the walls, on the rug, on the kitchen counter. He just eventually didn't care if people were destroying this house. However, Tyler did make a point to tell them to keep the noise down. At least he had the decency to tell people to be quiet. So initially during the party, like I said, he told people not to smoke, but then he told people, okay, if you're gonna smoke, you could do it outside. But then I guess at some point he realized, okay, if I let people smoke outside, I probably have a higher risk of having the cops called on me, which is absolutely not what he wanted to do, because first of all, he's got dead bodies in his house. Second of all, he's probably like, well, if the cops get called, it's my first party trying to look cool, and I'm gonna be known as I'm still going to be known as the weird guy if I do that. So let's not do that. So then he tells people that they could smoke in the house and to just absolutely don't go outside. Just smoke wherever you want to as long as it's not outside. So he's telling people that his parents are out of town and trying to make conversation. A bunch of people were like, okay, well, where'd they go? And he's telling people that they're in Georgia, that they're in Orlando, and eventually he just started telling people that they didn't live there. He even told his friend Ashley that that his dad had died, but she just assumed he meant his dad died when he was a kid. So she's probably not assuming that he just killed his father. So we're kind of jumping around a little bit, but I hope y'all are still with me. So 11:30, it's just a few people from school, but then by midnight is when like 100-something people showed up to this party. So Tyler's like, yeah, this is kind of great. I'm throwing a successful party. So people were kind of starting to notice the smell in the house, which, I mean, that makes sense. I guess he thought maybe if he buried the bodies that the smell wouldn't be as obvious. I mean, I guess that makes sense. That's probably why he's just throwing all this random stuff on top of them. But it didn't work, and people are starting to smell this kind of... They described it as a sweaty smell. Oh, that's disgusting. And they all kind of started picking up on these stains that were around the house. So as Tyler is telling people where his parents are, and he's changing his story, a lot of people are like, did he kill his parents? Of course they're joking. They don't think he actually killed his parents. They probably just think he's so high or so drunk that he can't remember where they went. As this party is going on, he's having conversations with people at the party, as any party host would do, and he's telling people that he's throwing this party because he wanted to have fun before he goes away, and that he did something bad, and that he's gonna go away for 60 years. But like I said, Tyler was known for just speaking nonsense in class, so a lot of people just assumed that this was another thing, that he was just talking just to talk, that it was just stuff that didn't make any sense. I mean, I think that's normal. I don't think anyone assumes that he killed his parents. But you know what? I think if I started smelling the smell around the house and I started noticing these stains around the house, I don't think I'd stay there. I think I'd go home and call the police. So remember that guy Mike I mentioned earlier? Okay, Tyler actually told Mike that he had killed his parents. And of course, Mike didn't believe him. I don't know why any sane human would actually think that this teenager has killed his parents. But Tyler says, you can go look, and leads him to the master bedroom. And he's like, yeah, I'm serious. Unlocks the door and shows Mike this scene. And of course, I don't think he can see the bodies because they were so buried by all that stuff. But there's got to be a smell. And I'm assuming that's what... I mean, there is a smell. Everyone's complaining about the smell. But I mean, it's probably worse in the master bedroom. Mike is just shocked that Tyler has shown him this crime scene. So here's what kind of baffles me. Mike wanted to call Crime Stoppers, and eventually he did, but instead of calling Crime Stoppers right away, he waited until the party was over to call Crime Stoppers, because he said that he wanted Tyler to have fun before he went to prison for life. I'm laughing because it doesn't make any sense to me. Like, if someone was like, especially someone that I barely know, was like, hey, look at these dead bodies, I wouldn't wait to call Crime Stoppers. I'd be like, okay. Hello, police. But maybe I'm weird. Oh, he also took a selfie with Tyler to remember Tyler by. So he says that they weren't like super good friends, but he took a selfie with him, wanted Tyler to... I don't know. I'm just telling the story. It doesn't make sense to me either. So like most of the other kids that were at this party, the reason that Mike was there is because there was nothing else to do in this town. Like I said, it's got one arcade in it, and everything else is just for retired people, because like I said, every single retired person in the entire United States lives here. Mike and his friends had already spent 3 hours at the mall, about 20 minutes away, an hour at McDonald's, and they just really wanted something to do, which, okay, if you live in a big city, it sounds kind of weird that someone would spend an hour at McDonald's, but when you live in a town that doesn't have anything else to do, it makes sense. I have spent many hours at McDonald's when I was a teenager when there was nothing to do. Tyler had also told another guy named Mark that he had killed his parents, but Mark was like, I don't want anything to do with that. I don't want to know that you have killed your parents, because that would make him an accessory after the fact, which I feel like him just knowing that now would make him an accessory, right? Let me know if you know that in the comments. Would Tyler just telling Mark to begin with make him an accessory because now he's got this knowledge? So at around 2 a.m., everyone left the party except for Mike, which is when Mike took that selfie with Tyler. And the cops had at some point ended up getting called for a noise complaint, and I think that they ended up breaking up the party, possibly, which is why everyone left. I couldn't find information on that, but they came for a noise complaint. I don't know why they didn't smell anything to begin with, but... So at 4:40 a.m., which is about almost like 3 hours after everyone's left, Tyler posts on Facebook again, and he said that he was gonna have another party, and to hit him up if you wanted to go. Why would anyone want to go to another party after you've destroyed your house? And everyone is just saying how weird you're acting and that there's this foul odor coming from... I wouldn't want to go to another one of your parties, Tyler. During the party, Tyler's friend Ashley Hayes asked him, what are you going to do if your parents come home while you're having this party? And Tyler was like, they won't. Trust me. Okay, he didn't wink. I did that, but I assume that's probably how his tone of voice was. So here's the wild thing. About 2 weeks before the party, Tyler had joked about murdering his parents on Facebook so that way he could have a party. He was also mad that his mom had taken his phone, and he was talking to his friend Mercedes, and the conversation went like this. Tyler says, yep, she's a cunt for show. Might kill her. And Mercedes says, OMG, no, jail or prison, I mean. And Tyler says, oh well, with that little keyboard heart, the alligator mouth and the 3. So after Mike has left this party and is called Crime Stoppers after he had fun at this party and let Tyler have fun at this party and takes a selfie with Tyler.
It's not an emergency, it kind of is. Just someone had a party tonight and someone reported that this kid had killed their parents.
He told me that the kid Tyler up, and he was like, he told me that, like, the gist of it, that he did something to his parents, and I was like, bro, I don't want to know any details. He said he already called and reported everything to Crime Stoppers. I was just calling because I felt like I needed to.
The cops show up at about 4:30 in the morning to Tyler's house after this tip from Mike. They park across the street, and Tyler's got his windows, like his blinds open, I guess, and the cops are like, what's going on in there? You're acting kind of suspicious. Because Tyler is acting suspicious. He's pacing back and forth across the house, and he's apparently got this, like, they described it as a disturbing look on his face, and he is pacing, and he's bringing stacks of books to the back bedroom, and he's frantically dumping these books, and he did this 3 times before the police were finally like, all right, let's go in. So the cops go up to his door. and they ring the bell. And Tyler did not answer immediately, so they start knocking on the door. And again, he doesn't answer, so they start ringing the bell. And finally Tyler answers the door, and he's got his hands behind his back. I don't think it was like for them to arrest him. I think it was just like how a child does whenever they're like rocking back and forth on their feet like that. You know what I'm talking about? I think that's kind of what he was doing. So the cops are like, oh God, he's got his hands behind his back. He's probably got a weapon. So they draw their guns and tell him that he needs to step out of the house and put his hands up, which Tyler does. They check him for weapons, and then they put him on the ground and they cuff him. And they try to go into his house, but the whole time Tyler is yelling at them saying, don't go in this house. Don't go in there. He just doesn't want the cops in the house, which I guess not. And his pupils are huge. And as they get close to the master bedroom, he starts freaking out more because he's like, don't like go in there. He's still telling them not to go in there, which if you hadn't killed your parents, you wouldn't have had to worry about that. So they open the master bedroom door, and they see this awful cover-up job with the furniture on top of his parents and the canister of coffee beans. That one's my favorite. The canister of the coffee beans. I think that's what really hid them, was that one addition of the can of coffee beans. And they see that the headboard and the bed frame are streaked with blood. So I guess that's where he put them, was on the bed, because that's where most of the blood was. So as they're searching the house, they find hydroxyzine for anxiety and citalopram for depression. I think the C one was mentioned in, I want to say, the Megan Meyer video, but I still don't know how to say that word. I can't say drug names. So something that's really weird is that, okay, Tyler has an older brother named Ryan, and Tyler waited until Ryan had moved out before he decided he was going to kill his parents. Which, I mean, I guess it makes sense, because he didn't want Ryan to find his parents and possibly call the cops on him, or maybe he didn't want to have to kill Ryan too, if Ryan saw him killing his parents, or maybe he didn't want Ryan to I don't know, but he waited until Ryan had moved out before he decided he was going to kill his parents. Personally, I don't think it's because Tyler cares about Ryan. I think it's because he's a narcissist, and I think it's exclusively so that way Ryan wouldn't find the parents, and that way he'd be able to go longer without being caught. At the time of the murders, Ryan was 23, and he went to visit Tyler in prison to get answers out of him as to why he did it, which I think I know why he did it, but that's just my opinion. And he also went because Tyler had been like spreading lies about their parents, basically saying all these things about their dad, especially, that weren't true. And he was almost making his dad out to be this awful person, but his friends all thought the drugs were what made him kill his parents. A lot of people say they don't know why Tyler killed his parents, but I think it's because Tyler's a spoiled brat who knew he wouldn't get what he wants otherwise, so he thought this is what he had to do. He thought if his parents were dead, he could just do whatever he wanted. At his parents' funeral, I think it was something like 1,000 people ended up going, and Mary Jo was a devout Catholic, and the morning that they found the parents' bodies, Mary Jo was actually supposed to read that verse from the Bible, the 13:4-7 Corinthians. It's the Bible passage that talks about love is patient, love is kind. It's the one that they use in my favorite movie, A Walk to Remember. An inmate in prison said that Tyler had apparently been planning the murders up to 3 weeks before the party, and Tyler also told this inmate that the party was great and that he should have been there. So again, I don't think this kid feels bad at all. I think he was a narcissistic chump who wanted to do whatever he wanted without consequences. And I think that lost my train of thought. In 2014, he was sentenced to life without the possibility of parole, and they had actually considered the death penalty, but because he was underage, because he was under 18, he could not legally be sentenced to the death. Since he was 17, he could not legally be sentenced to the death penalty. In December of 2018, he was resentenced to life with the possibility of parole, which I don't think he deserves. I think he should stay in jail for the rest of his life. He's currently serving his time in Okeechobee Correctional Facility. I don't know if I'm saying that right. Tyler in prison has written to Mike and said that while he forgives Mike, he blames Mike for him being in prison because Mike is the one that called Crime Stoppers. Yeah, it's not your fault. Don't take any responsibility for it, Tyler. Put the blame all on Mike. So I don't think he's really forgiven Mike. I think he just said that. And he also said in letters to his grandparents that he feels guilt, anger, confusion, and boredom. In April of 2015, the house that he lived in was demolished. Now, here's exactly why I don't think Tyler feels any guilt or any remorse for what he did. In prison, if you send Tyler a fan letter, if you send this psychopath a fan letter, he signs his name as Hambo, and he signs autographs for his fellow inmates as Hammer Time. I think MC Hammer could probably sue your ass if you were worth a damn for that. I know if I were MC Hammer, I'd sue your ass. Okay, so I don't think Tyler feels any remorse for what he did. I think now that he's got the possibility for the chance of parole, I think he's saying that he feels guilt for what he did, so that way he could try and get out, but I don't think Tyler has ever felt guilty over what he did. I think Tyler only cares about Tyler, and I think that any kind of guilt that he feels is, I think that he is not sorry he did it. I think he's sorry that he got caught. I think maybe he regrets not killing his parents the day before the party, and I think he feels confused as to why he didn't bury the bodies somewhere where they wouldn't be as easily findable. But I think he is an absolute fiend. I think he's an animal and that his parents did not deserve what they got. Now, you know what? Calling him an animal is too nice. I think he's an awful human being, and I hope Tyler never gets out of prison, not on parole, not on anything, and I hope he has a miserable life, and that's my opinion on Tyler. So, that is the case of Tyler Hadley and what he did to his parents because he wanted to have a party and he knew his parents would never let him. I know someone probably thinks I was too hard on him, that we don't know what was going on behind the scenes, and while that's true, Tyler's parents seem to be genuinely good people, unlike their son, and that's my opinion. So let me know what you guys think in the comments below. I will see you all in my next one. Bye!